The date is March 31st, 1996. The air within the Arrowhead Pond is thick with the residue of 1 hour of professional wrestling, but it's heavier still with expectation and the acrid smoke of political maneuvering. Two men, both titans of the World Wrestling Federation, are locked in the final seconds of the longest, most brutal main event in WrestleMania history, a 60-minute Iron Man match. On the mat, Bret the Hitman Hart, the reigning Federation champion, has his opponent, Shawn Michaels, trapped in the inescapable vice of the sharpshooter. The clock is ticking down and the bell soon rings. The match is seemingly over. Bret Hart, believing he's retained his title by virtue of the time limit expiring, snatches his belt and starts to leave. But this is not a night for rules, tradition, or the established hierarchy. This is the night the new regime takes control. The voice of Howard Finkel, as instructed by Federation President Gorilla Monsoon, cuts through the confusion. A voice of manufactured authority decreeing that the match must continue under sudden death rules. It is a decision that, in an instant, invalidates 60 minutes of effort and rewrites the company's history. It is a decree born not of sporting necessity, but of pure, unadulterated backstage power. Shawn Michaels, the supposed victim of exhaustion, springs back to life. He hits the champion with the sweet chin music, his signature super kick. Michaels, fueled by the knowledge that the script, the booking, is now entirely in his favor, hits him again. The referee's hand hits the mat 3 times, and the explosion of pyrotechnics is not merely a celebration for a new champion. It is the glorious, deafening coronation of the new monarch of the locker room. As Michaels kneels, weeping the tears of a man who has not just won a match, but won the keys to the entire kingdom, the television cameras capture the image intended for eternity. The Heartbreak Kid, ascending to the absolute pinnacle of the industry. This is the official, undeniable pinnacle of the Kliq's power. To truly understand that moment, the deliberate sidelining of the respected champion, the manipulation of the rules, and the flawless elevation of the hand-picked successor, one must trace the insidious origins of the most dominant, divisive, and influential backstage unit in the history of professional wrestling, the Kliq. Their story does not begin with the flash of a superkick, but in the stale, echoing spaces of mid-1990s Federation locker rooms. The industry, then as now, was a nomadic, isolated existence. Men traveled together, worked together, and lived in one another's pockets for 300 days a year. Naturally, friendships formed, but the Kliq, composed of Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, and later cemented by Paul Levesque, was something entirely different. It was an intentional alliance, a fraternity forged not just by mutual companionship, but by a shared ambition and a cold-eyed understanding of how the political game was played in a company still tightly controlled by Vince McMahon. They were initially just 5 close friends. Hall and Nash, the stoic, towering figures, brought a veteran's cynical intelligence. Michaels, the charismatic, athletic prodigy, supplied the main event talent. Waltman, the youngest, provided the energy and the connection to the lower card. And Levesque, the newcomer, was the diligent, clean-living confidant, reputedly brought into the fold by Nash as the designated driver who was always sober enough to listen. They bonded over cards, travel, and a shared contempt for the established, often antiquated norms of the locker room. The shift from friendship to functional monarchy was gradual but inexorable. The power they amassed was an organic phenomenon, growing from the simple fact that they controlled the most significant variables in the Federation's transitional period: star power and trust. As Michaels, Nash, and Hall were consistently booked in main event or high-profile slots, they realized their collective leverage with the bookers, primarily McMahon himself, was immense. If they all agreed on an outcome, a storyline, or the treatment of a fellow wrestler, their combined will was nearly impossible for the company to defy without risking the loss of their top-drawing stars. They began to operate as a cohesive unit, a shadow government. They called their own matches, often improvising in the ring, secure in the knowledge that no one would dare criticize them. They pushed for storylines that centered on their group, ensuring that even when they feuded with each other, the spotlight remained exclusively on them. Their success was not only in elevating themselves, but in the mutual protection they afforded. No one outside the group could easily cross a Kliq member without facing the combined career-stalling weight of the entire faction. This cohesion stood in stark relief against the traditional isolation of the rest of the locker room. While the Kliq shared information, defended one another, and planned their next moves, other wrestlers operated as individuals, easily marginalized and picked off. This systemic advantage was the engine of their control, and the wreckage it left behind was a testament to its effectiveness. The list of those reportedly buried or sidelined by the Kliq's influence reads like a ledger of unfulfilled potential. Chris Candido and Shane Douglas, talented performers, were mocked and marginalized for refusing to play the backstage political game. Lex Luger, once positioned as the heir to Hulk Hogan, saw his push systematically outshined by the meteoric Kliq-approved ascensions of Nash and Hall. Even established veterans like Bam Bam Bigelow reportedly lost main event spots due to internal Kliq politics, while the British Bulldog and Owen Hart, despite immense talent and family connection to Bret, were constantly shuffled down the card, their opportunities perpetually limited in favor of a Kliq ally. Perhaps the most explicit and shocking example of their ruthless power was the case of Carl Ouellet, performing as Jean-Pierre Lafitte. When he was scheduled to lose a match to Kevin Nash, Ouellet reportedly balked, feeling the outcome was unfair to his character. The refusal led to a heated backstage confrontation with Michaels. The Kliq's retaliation was swift, brutal, and coordinated. Lafitte was booked to repeatedly lose low-profile matches in a humiliating fashion, a sequence of defeats designed to destroy his credibility and end his run with the company. Shawn Michaels, with a chilling lack of remorse, later admitted, "We buried him." This was not wrestling, it was corporate assassination. Simultaneously, the alliance served as a self-sustaining engine of elevation. The ultimate beneficiary was, of course, Shawn Michaels, who went from a spectacular mid-card talent to the undisputed face of the company, a destiny realized at WrestleMania 12. Kevin Nash was also made champion and held the title for nearly a year, an unprecedented run for a man in only his second year within the company. Triple H, the newest member, received consistent backstage support that ensured his survival during a period of poor on-screen gimmickry and guaranteed his main event push, cementing his future. The Kliq did not just succeed, they engineered a reality where their success was the only plausible outcome. The fragile ecosystem of the Kliq faced its first existential threat in the spring of 1996. After years of financial stagnation in the Federation, World Championship Wrestling began offering guaranteed, lucrative contracts, a revolutionary concept for a business that traditionally paid its talent on a nightly basis. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were the first to defect, signing contracts that guaranteed them a far more secure future. Their final night with the Federation was on May 19, 1996, at Madison Square Garden. What transpired that night, dubbed the Curtain Call, was perhaps the single greatest, most public exposure of the backstage reality to ever occur. After the main event, in which Shawn Michaels wrestled Kevin Nash, the four men, Michaels and Hall as babyfaces, and Triple H and Nash as heels, gathered in the ring. They embraced, raised their arms together, and acknowledged the crowd, entirely breaking character in an unforgivable violation of kayfabe, the strict illusion that all in-ring events were real. It was an act of deliberate, arrogant defiance. The fallout was predictable, yet profoundly influential. Hall and Nash, already on their way out, were untouchable. Michaels, the Federation champion and the company's biggest draw, was too valuable to punish. The full weight of the company's wrath fell solely on Triple H, the only remaining member with a career that could be significantly derailed. He was demoted, stripped of his scheduled main event push, and booked to lose in the first round of the subsequent King of the Ring tournament. Yet even this punishment served the Kliq in the long run. Triple H's unquestioning acceptance of his penance earned him a new vital currency: respect from his detractors, including locker room kingpins like The Undertaker. More importantly, the punishment's fallout led to the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin, the man who took Triple H's place at King of the Ring. Austin's subsequent organic ascension ignited the Attitude Era, the very movement that would save the Federation from being crushed by their biggest rival. The political sacrifice of Triple H became an accidental but indispensable component of the Federation's ultimate victory in the Monday Night War. With Hall and Nash in WCW, the Kliq's influence did not diminish. it merely metastasized. They had succeeded in shaping two competing professional wrestling companies. Hall and Nash, along with Hulk Hogan, soon formed the New World Order, a stable that utilized the new, meta-aware reality of backstage politics to create a successful invasion storyline. When Shawn Waltman joined them, the Kliq, renamed the Wolfpack, was operating as the dominant political force in both major promotions. Back in the Federation, the remaining members, Michaels and Triple H, eventually convinced management to let them align on screen. They formed D-Generation X, a stable that mirrored the irreverence and rebellious energy of the New World Order. DX, in its own way, became as influential as its WCW counterpart, helping to fully usher in the anarchic, boundary-pushing attitude era. It was during a DX promo on Raw is War that Shawn Michaels, with a self-satisfied smirk, famously declared that Bret Hart had not destroyed the Kliq, but that the Kliq owned the professional wrestling business. It was a statement that was less bravado and more factual reporting. The ultimate long-term consequence of the Kliq's initial political dominance was the inescapable nature of its longevity. The simmering, years-long animosity between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, part genuine heat, part manufactured storyline, came to a head at the Montreal Screwjob in 1997, a moment so culturally significant it transcended wrestling. This event, precipitated by years of mistrust and Michaels' political maneuvering, ensured that the Kliq's narrative would forever be intertwined with the darkest, most complicated chapter in the company's history. Even after Michaels' temporary retirement due to injury, the political inheritance of the Kliq remained. Triple H became the unquestioned political successor, rising through the ranks to become the company's top heel and eventually a 14-time world champion. His eventual marriage to Vince McMahon's daughter Stephanie cemented his position not just as a top performer, but as a corporate executive, ensuring that the Kliq's DNA was woven into the very fabric of the company's leadership structure. For all the temporary demotions and feuds, the fundamental truth remained. The Kliq never truly lost control. In the end, the Kliq was not just a group of friends. It was a self-interested organism that mastered the ecosystem of professional wrestling. They recognized that in an industry where one's success depends entirely on the goodwill of management, collective political power was the ultimate championship. They used their talent and their collective will to seize the keys to the kingdom, burying those who opposed them and elevating those within their circle. That night at WrestleMania 12, watching Shawn Michaels' coronation was not the end of a match, but the reflection of a new era. One where a few friends, bound by mutual ambition, demonstrated with chilling clarity how to leverage friendship into absolute, unchecked power. The Kliq got away with it, and in doing so, they rewrote the rules of the game for every wrestler who has stepped into a locker room since.